Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day. Jennifer is grateful for the opportunity to educate, empower, and inspire you with powerful conversations, insights, and new viewpoints. Here's your host, Jennifer J. Hammond.
This is Deborah Hammond, and I'm so excited. As you know, I love when I can bring you people who are really going to help you in one way or another. The real estate market, boy, we've been going through so many changes in the real estate market. This pandemic that I think a lot of us thought was going to end in 2020. Boy, it sure didn't. Here we are rushing through the year 2021, and we are seeing so much change. And sometimes we need a coach for our lives. And so my next guest, Lynn Guerin, he's here to help us understand how to get through these transitions and really find that silver lining. So welcome to the show, Guerin.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great to be with you.
I'm so happy to have you. And I didn't go through a long bio because I really would love for you to start with sharing your story, because you really have an interesting story. Will you share your story?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My background really business-wise is in the consulting, training, and performance improvement field. Worked with a couple of large companies coming out of college, the General Electric and Johnson & Johnson and companies like that. So I had, I think, some great background and training from some of America's best companies. And then over a period of time, worked with many of America's best companies, the General Electrics of the world and General Motors and Nissan and Toyota and those kinds of things. Probably the most interesting in the last 20 years, had the opportunity to begin working with America's greatest coach and teacher, UCLA legend, Coach John Wooden. So everything I know about coaching, I've pretty much learned from him, and the opportunity I had to be coached and mentored by a man as special as Coach Wooden, I think, is the important part of the story, and probably the value of what I can share with people in this business.
And I hate to ask this question because it always sounds so simple, but for anybody who doesn't know who Coach Wooden is, will you tell a little bit about some of his highlights? Yeah,
Coach Wooden is really considered America's greatest sports coach, not just basketball. And when you ask, there's actually been a number of surveys and polls and those kinds of things to define, America loves to identify the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time. And in the coaching profession, when you ask today's greatest coaches, who's the best ever, most of them will say there's a lot of debate on who number two is, but number one, pretty much the consensus is John Wooden. Best known for the 27 years he spent at UCLA and how he won 10 national championships in 12 years, won 7 of those in a row, won 88 straight games, won 38 consecutive Final Four tournament games, and actually took his team. We just came off of an incredible tournament with Gonzaga and UCLA and Baylor, who won it all. John Wooden took his teams to the finals of the Final Four 10 times and won all 10 of those games. No one has ever come close. Coach Drew at Baylor, though, is emulating Coach Wooden a little bit, because I think it took Coach Drew 17 or 18 years to win his first championship at Baylor. And it actually took Coach Wooden 16 years to win his first one at UCLA. But then he went on an unprecedented run. So evidence of one of Coach's key principles: good things take time, and they should.
And I think that that's an important lesson, because as we go through a lot of transitions, we look to have things just be instant for us, and they're not necessarily going to be instant. And transition, we've had so many changes. And with the pandemic, a lot of people are having to sell their house, or they've just decided it's time to sell. But often they don't want to sell. I have a client right now who needs to sell because of just unfortunately, as they get older, the body's not as good. And so it's time for her not to have a whole bunch of stairs. And so it's time for her to sell, but she's really having a hard time. And I know, when you and I met, we talked about using those Wooden coaching principles and how we could apply that to people who are not doing so well with all the transitions. And, buying and selling, of course, we've done surveys and people will say they'd rather have a root canal or even spend a night in jail than have to go through the whole buying process or selling process, because both sides can be so incredibly stressful. So let's talk about those Wooden coaching principles applied to real estate, buying and selling.
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4, in thinking through this, 3 or 4 kind of amazing things that Coach Wooden can bring to the real estate idea, a business development idea. And the first is getting a real estate professional to think of themselves first as the head coach of their own life, and then the head coach of their own business. Ultimately, you're responsible, you're in control. It's your life, it's your business, and you have to think about you can't really effectively coach others, coach a client through a transaction or anything like that if you're not doing a good job of coaching yourself. I think that's the first key idea. The second one is the notion of real estate and selling real estate really often comes off as purely transactional. And the more it's relational and the less it's transactional, I think that's really, really key. It's got to be more than a commission. It's got to be a commitment to a person, to a process, to a quality relationship that you're building with the client. And thinking of yourself as a coach and coaching as John Wooden taught it can really help you effectively develop the quality of relationships that you need to have with your client. First of all, I think Coach had an approach that ultimately is going to make you a better person. And if you're a better person, you're going to create better relationships with your clients, not just in the short term to try to move a transaction forward, but over a longer period to build a client who might want to work with you, not only on the first house, but we're moving more and more all the time, and we're going through different phases of our life. So having a real estate professional that you can trust is a really key idea.
I agree. I think that's thank you for saying that, because for me over the years, I've really gotten to know my clients to the point where we joke about because so many of them have now moved several times with me. And so we joke about, number one, when I'm coming over for dinner, is there enough room for me at the table? And we talk about when we look at a place, again, the resale value, we're like, well, I'm going to be the one stuck having to sell this. And we joke about it. But again, just knowing that I'm looking at them as a relationship. How can we create a relationship, not just a transaction? And I think that's one of the most critical parts is really understanding that it's not just a transaction, that we're all connected, and, treat others as if you would want to be treated. Because when you're in a stressful situation and things are coming down on you, who would you want around you, and how would you want to be treated? And make sure you're applying that golden rule. So thank you for saying that. So I'm sorry, continue please on the coaching. Well,
I think in creating that quality relationship, I think the ultimate foundation for that relationship is trust. And I would challenge every real estate professional to ask themselves, do they have a teachable point of view on exactly what trust means? If you ask your client, what would it mean for you to trust me? Or the question is, do you even trust your client? We teach a really powerful point of view on what trust was, connected to the way John Wooden talked about it. And it's really an acrostic for trust. If you take the word trust, Trust, develop a word that starts with each of those letters, you get a really powerful, teachable point of view on trust. And trust starts with the truth. Trust starts with the truth. And you think about all of the opportunities for the truth not to be there in the conversation around a real estate transaction, it's fraught with the possibilities that people are, manipulating the truth. But you have no trust if you don't start with truth. And trust also involves reliance. I've got to be able to rely absolutely on everything that you tell me because I believe you and I believe what you're telling me is the truth. Trust also involves understanding the fact that you've taken the time, made the effort to really understand who I am, what my needs are, how I can best be served. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. So if you've got, if you're telling the truth, if you can rely on what's being said, if you've got a sense of understanding, the S stands for sacrifice, right? My real estate professional, are they willing to make any sacrifices on my behalf? Am I willing to make any sacrifices on their behalf? I think the more there's a quality give and take, right, within this transaction that you're ultimately trying to build and the relationship that you're trying to build, you'll have a better chance of developing a trusting relationship. And the last key idea, the last T is time. Trust takes time. And the more that I will invest time in getting to know a person and what they need, what this transaction involves, the more likely I am to be able to work with this person. So a really powerful, teachable point of view on what trust is. Tell the truth, be someone you can rely on, always create an understanding with your client, be willing to work from a sense of sacrifice, and take the time to do it right.
Yay! I love that. That's beautiful. I think acronyms really help us in so many ways. Well, just not only to remember things, but then also to focus on the meaning of something. And as you said, I thought was beautiful at the beginning of that was how do you define trust? And I say that a lot of times about many things, including like communication. I have found early in my career, when 20 some years ago, I realized that one of the first things I had to do was ask, would you prefer for me to call you? Would you prefer for me to email you? Or would you prefer for me to text message you? And it was so amazing, just that what seems so simple, just communicating with somebody. I need to make sure I communicate what are the new listings. I need to make sure I've communicated if there's a deadline, I need to, all that stuff. And people getting so angry because the communication came on the wrong channel and realizing, okay, we define communication differently. So the more you can make sure that you have an agreement on the definition of something like trust, I think that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that one. Wow.
Well, I think, Jennifer, you also did a great job of setting up another important acronym that we like to use as part of the Wooden course, and that's really the process of building a good team, and that takes the notion of care. If you think about the two things ultimately you'd like to have, in a client relationship, the idea that there's really trust and that there is really a sense of care. I really care about my client cares about me. So we have a quick one on care, and communicate is the first one.
Beautiful.
Yeah, communicate, appreciate, relate, and evaluate. CARE. Communicate, appreciate, relate, and evaluate. Those four things will help you show every day in everything that you do that you ultimately care. And most people, the old end, I don't care what you know until I know whether you care or not, I think really applies in the real estate business. So those two things, building trust. John Wooden, Coach Wooden had this, when you ask Coach to relate to the idea of what was most important in his life and how he wanted to be remembered. And here was the most famous coach of all time and all the things he did and won and 19 books and Presidential Medal of Freedom. I mean, every honor you could possibly get in his area, his realm. The only way when he was asked how he would like to be remembered, the phrase that he would use was, I want to be remembered as somebody who was considerate of others.
Beautiful.
That I was considerate of others. What that meant was he really cared about people, and people really, excuse me, and people really cared about him as well.
Yeah, I think that that's something that is so overlooked is is I want to say the small things, but the small things are really the big things, so to speak. And like I talk about a smile, or even, being famous for the yay. I just love to celebrate someone else in one way or another, even if it's that smallest little 3-letter word of yay, or even just sharing your smile when you walk into a store or wherever you are, sharing your smile. It's amazing how something so simple can really change someone's day. And I've been on the other side of it, where I'm having a challenging day and someone smiles at me in a way that it's almost like they're just glowing. They're just spreading this happiness just by smiling. And it doesn't matter what age they are. It doesn't matter what gender they are. It doesn't matter anything. All it matters is that you can feel that warmth of that smile and that happiness. And so I think that being considerate is a very important thing. So, that was beautiful. Yay!
Great. Thank you.
So what are some of the other things that we could use for people when they're buying or when they're selling and using the Wooten coaching techniques?
Yeah. Well, I think Coach Wooden was very famous for something called the Pyramid of Success. And this was basically a diagram that he spent 14 years working on it. This is actually a little picture of it.
Beautiful.
And he spent.
If you're not watching the video, you have to go to the video and we'll just see the pyramid.
Yeah. He spent 14 years trying to define what success meant. And the behavior it takes every day to achieve true success as he defined it. And the Pyramid of Success is a perfect day-to-day behavior template for a real estate professional, and the way in which they can powerfully and professionally and personally relate to their clients as a great coach. It was the behavior template that he used every day of his life, and he lived to be 99 years old and was still very productive, honestly, in his last years, right up to literally a month before he passed away at age 99. He was still coaching, teaching, thinking, reciting poetry. I mean, an amazing man in perspective. And this Pyramid of Success was the blueprint that he used for his day-to-day behavior. I'll just share a couple of blocks from the pyramid. He basically built the pyramid. You kind of can see it in the background there. I have a wooden version of it, and much of our book, Coach 'em Way Up, relates some key ideas and learnings from the Pyramid of Success. But he laid 5 blocks in place he called the foundation. And these are blocks that really relate to creating professional relationships in your life and in your business. And the first one was called industriousness. That doesn't sound like a common word, but he developed this word during a period of time when we were in the industrial age. Mm-hmm. So industriousness really meant hard work, but it meant work at another level. It meant work that was much more productive. He had a phrase that he used called no activity without achievement. No activity without achievement, which meant don't do a lot of busy work. Do the things that really help you get to the goals that you have. There's a lot of activity or a lot of busy work in the real estate business that isn't really productive to get relationships done, to get a business put together, to get transactions, to get listings done, all of those kinds of things. So hard work and careful planning was what he defined industriousness to be all about. And the second block on the foundation was enthusiasm. You've got to love what you do, and you can never be as productive or as professionally competent if you don't. You're ultimately going to be better at the things that you love to do. And when you combine the quality of industriousness with the quality of your attitude and the enthusiasm of your attitude, now you've got an opportunity to really be productive. So those were what he called the 2 cornerstones. And then in the middle of those 2 blocks, he put 3 other blocks that involved others. So think about this from the perspective of your client. The first one was friendship, right? Work at friends. Friendship takes time. Friendship takes effort. Never take friendship for granted. ultimately, I think you'd like to develop a quality friendship with the people that you're impacting in a way that, I mean, a real estate transaction is maybe one of the 2 or 3 or maybe most important financial transaction you engage in during your whole life. There are so many things in the short term and even generationally connected to the importance of a real estate transaction, and that the quality of that relationship has to be consistent with the quality and the importance of that transaction. And oftentimes I don't think it is. So, and then at the middle of that pyramid was the concept of loyalty. Everyone has to be loyal to someone and some things. Well, are you trying to sell a house, or are you trying to build a loyal relationship with your client? And is there a sense of loyalty for the person you're working with and for someone who's working with you? And the fact that it was at the core of the foundation is really a critical idea. We don't have enough loyalty in our culture today. And loyalty is, really seems to be going by the board to some degree. We walk away from relationships. We walk away from families. We walk away from marriages. We abandon our schools. We abandon our churches. We're not as loyal as we used to be as a culture. And that's a problem. That's a systemic and foundational problem in our culture. And then the last block, as it relates to others, is cooperation. The quality of cooperation you have in a real estate transaction is really essential. And the 2 key elements in Coach's definition of cooperation were this: listen if you want to be heard. Listen if you want to be heard. I've worked with a lot of real estate professionals over the years, and not very good listeners. Not very good listeners. Much too quick to talk and tell and try to move their transaction forward to make their commission happen, and not really doing a good job of listening to their clients. And then the other piece of the cooperation block was be more interested in finding the best way than in having your own way.
Yeah.
Well, what does a real estate professional do? Go back to care with the quality of communication to really find out what is the best way for this to work for me, for you, to really make this happen in a way that would be pleasing and develop this long-term relationship. So and that's just 5 of the 25 blocks of John Wooden's pyramid, but all of them absolutely relatable to being a really quality real estate professional.
And I agree. So often I have realized that it's so important in the role of a real estate agent to make sure that we are really looking at what is the win-win solution for everyone. And that definitely, unfortunately, is not the viewpoint of many of the real estate agents, even that I have had transactions with, I've run across and just been so disappointed because it's so clear that they're not interested at all in a win-win. And they're not even necessarily interested in the win for their client. They're just interested in a win for themselves, which just makes my skin just crawl because I'm so disappointed. And as you said, it feels like some things are just, they're falling away where people are just, they're looking for that instant, whatever. It's instant food, instant reaction, instant, and they're not looking at building a relationship or finding out the needs and wants of the people that are involved in a transaction, and then making sure that they're balancing those to make sure that, again, it's helping the majority of the people so that you get that win-win scenario instead of looking at how is it best for that particular agent, just looking for the buck, just looking for the money in it, which is so disappointing to me.
Yeah, I think the challenge is for every real estate professional to think of themselves as to how are they really going to distinguish themselves from everybody else I might be able to do business with. I mean, man, there's a lot of people I could find to help me sell my house or help me buy another house. So what makes you the person that I really want to do business with, want to have a relationship with, I want to be friends with over a long time, who is really coaching me in this area of expertise where you need to be the head coach and to help me through this process. And that's the person I'm going to be reliant on. How do you stand out by standing up for the things that really matter and that translate to me as in my best interest as your client? I think that's really the opportunity every real estate professional has a chance to think about. So what is going to distinguish you? Your character. Again, I could go back to Coach's pyramid and name a lot of those. But as an example, he has 5 blocks on the pyramid that we describe as the high character behaviors. 5 behaviors. And I'd ask every real estate professional to think about themselves from these perspectives. I'll give you these 5. Sincerity, honesty, reliability, integrity, and patience. Those are the things that we think translate to the quality of the character a person has. If those things are involved in the kind of transaction I have with my real estate professional, goes back to that idea. That's somebody I can trust.
Yeah.
So do they exhibit that high character behavior? Are they a lot more interested in their character than their reputation? Are they a lot more interested in their, in the quality of relationship versus the commission they're going to make? I think that's a test. Those are the tests for a person who really stands out and somebody I would want to do business with.
I agree. And I think that those are the things that I strive for. And I look for that when I look for a real estate agent, when I'm buying in a different location that I'm not licensed in. And even I'm also a real estate investor, and I look for that. And when I teach online classes. And that's one of the things I do is I teach when you're actually meeting with your lender, with your real estate agent, whoever your professional is, they should be people who have those characteristics. And as you said earlier, are really focused on creating a relationship, not just a transaction. And just like mortgage lenders, it can be the same thing where they're just very transactional. They're looking for just getting that one loan closed, and it's not about a relationship. So they're not necessarily giving you the best advice. And again, as you said, they're not being the coach. They need to put on the role of coach and have that as their hat, that they're wearing, so to speak, figuratively, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to put on their coaching shirt. They need to put their whistle around their neck, and they need to put their head coach hat and understand that that's really the opportunity they have to be the coach in the sport, the business. They're the expert, and they should be able to apply this effective coaching. In our book, Coach 'Em Way Up, we share kind of a 5-step process on what made John Wooden such a great coach. I could take a minute and share those.
I was going to say, we're just about out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you what I ask every guest. And that is, how do you, Lynn, how do you create yays in every day?
Well, one, I create yay in every day just by waking up and knowing I'm putting my feet on the ground, and I get to jump up and say, praise God, another day on the planet. I say yay because you take no days for granted. And then also knowing I have an opportunity to coach and help people in what they do, helping them to be their best, realizing their full potential, and to be able to share the wisdom from this absolutely amazing human being, John Wooden, and all the things that he teaches us to not only lead us on a path to potential greatness, but also on a path to goodness. And that's what made him so special. He was described as a man whose greatness was only exceeded by his goodness. And that's really an opportunity for all of us to make sure, hey, we're not just trying to be successful, but that we're also the best people we can be every day, loving and serving and coaching others.
Lynn, I'm so grateful to know you, and I thank you for all that you do. Would you share with with anyone who's listening right now, who, if they wanted to get coaching from you, how can they find out more about what you do and just anything that you have available for them?
Yes, we have a website, the johnrwoodencourse.com. So they can go to that website, thejohnrwoodencourse.com. We also have some links at coachemwayup.com. and they can reach me, email me at LG, my initials, LG at tjrwc.com, the John R. Wooden Course.com. And we have a total curriculum, some really powerful assessments.